Hey, Charlie.
Hi, Will. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Oh, geez. Yeah, so I'm just here early just to do some troubleshooting really quick.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm here.
just
I'm ready. I'll just turn my camera off and you let me know when you need me.
yeah, of course. So yeah, we'll be starting up like at 7, so I'll give a
Okay.
holler.
All right. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Great having you.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Dr. Perry. Oh,
How are
hello.
you?
Let me go reveal. It's Will. Um, Thank you for coming on, Dr. Perry. Just doing some quick troubleshooting. So yeah, we should be starting to go at like 7 o'clock on the dot.
Awesome. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Hello,
Hey, Carolyn.
how are you?
Doing well, doing well. Just yeah, just getting everything prepared. So still also on the clock too. So yeah,
Oh boy.
but
Well,
yeah, so
we made it. Hi there, Dr. Perry. How are you?
All is well. How about you, Carolyn?
I'm doing all right. It's funny, it's a little deja vu because I was just listening to this podcast that you were on. So I'm like, I literally just
Oh,
closed that tab. That's
oh wow. Oh,
hilarious.
that is
Yep,
yes, small world.
yep, yep. I mean, just like continue. I had my questions already laid out, but I was listening to which podcast was this? This is episode 9 of whose podcast is with Kenneth Braswell?
mhm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, that was funny talking about your what was it? Someone's son came to them and was like, "Where do babies come from?" and having to have that conversation. I was like, "Oh gosh, ooh, shivers."
Yeah,
It's important.
yeah. Important for people to be able to have trusted sources to get good information. Nobody knows that better than a group of journalists, though, right? So
Right, yeah. But the point of being like you can't tell a lie because they have the internet is phew, wild.
yeah,
It's a little different back in the day.
it's a brand new day. It sure is. Absolutely.
Yeah. But I'm excited that you're joining us for this conversation. And yeah,
Yeah, as am I. I've always been of the mind that it's important to take these conversations beyond the walls of the university. So
absolutely. Alrighty. Well, guess we'll sit tight.
Hey, Will, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I just
So,
wanted to just test the audio. Obviously, this is working.
I'm hearing it perfectly.
Okay, great.
Right. Hey, Brendan.
Perfect,
Sorry, I
thanks.
didn't catch you coming in. So just getting everything ready to go. So, yeah, let's see here. There we go. Hey, Damona.
Hi, Will.
Hi. So we'll be starting at the top of the hour. Good to have you here. And,
Good to be here. Do you want
yeah.
AirPods? Is that preferred since we're doing panel? Would that
like AirPods, like the ear.
yeah, just for audio or do
Well,
you
right now I'm hearing you just fine.
okay.
So this works. So
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right.
but yeah, we should be starting in a little over 10 minutes. So I'll give a holler in a little bit.
Okay. Thanks for
All
having
right.
me.
No problem. Bye. Hey, Benita. Okay, so it is 7 o'clock. We're going to start things off in about 5 minutes. We'll give everyone 5 minutes to get in. Oh. All right.
Sounds great.
Is my video on?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, for some reason it's not showing up. Okay, now we're in gallery mode. Awesome. Okay, so yeah. Anyway, we'll start this off shortly, really quick. Should be a very good night for everyone. And everything's recorded, everything's good. All right, let's get into this. First off, my name is Will Patterson. I am the secretary for the New York Association of Black Journalists, and I'm also the head of our podcast committee. And I want to thank you all for joining us for this panel on balancing love and journalism, which is also going to be taped for our podcast, The Sidebar by NYABJ. Give a little brief speech about it. The Sidebar, it's our official podcast, and it's a show about the world of media through the lens of Black media makers. We launched the podcast back in 2022. It's a good mixture of original content and panels such as this. Today, we just released an interview with Cynthia Horner, which I highly recommend checking out. We've had guests such as comedian Roy Wood Jr., filmmaker Tanya Lee Lewis, Sherelle Dorsey, Musa Jackson, and more. And if you're a part of NYABJ, I encourage you to reach out to me. My email is will@nyabj.org. And so, to explain about what's going on tonight, I would like to introduce our podcast co-founder and producer, CAROLYN ADAMS. She's going to be our moderator for the night. And I also invite you to, if you have any questions in the second half of the show, we'll have a Q&A session. We'd like to include some of the questions in that Q&A to be a part of that. So also one last thing, we have a Black History Month brunch coming up on Sunday, February 25th from 12 to 3 p.m. at Ashford's in Simpson's Sugar Bar. Shannon Lanier of News 12 will be hosting. You can get tickets on our website, nyabj.org, and also on our Linktree, linktree.com/nyabj. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to CAROLYN. Enjoy.
Thank you so much, Will. And thank you all for joining us for this live taping of the Sidebar by NYABJ. As Will said, I'm your host, CAROLYN ADAMS. We have a really fun panel on hand for today's conversation about balancing love and life as journalists and professionals working in media. So whether you're in a relationship or happily married or navigating the wild world of dating, there will definitely be something in here for you. So let's kick it off with some introductions. Can each of you briefly tell us who you are, what you do, and how you spent Valentine's Day?
I'll start.
Brendan, do you want to start?
Oh.
Or Damona? Perfect. There we go.
Sure.
No, go for it.
I am Damona Hoffman. I am a certified dating and relationship coach. But a lot of what I do is content. So I am a regular on the Drew Barrymore show on NBC's Access Daily with Mario and Kit. And I also write for a number of publications, the Washington Post, I've written for the LA Times, all about dating and relationships. I spent my Valentine's Day, no surprise, working. I live in Los Angeles. I'm in New York right now, taping an episode of Drew. But normally I'm in Los Angeles, but you know, media starts at all times. So I was up at 4 a.m. doing New York media. And then pretty much all day, I just had a book come out in January called F the Fairy Tale. And so I was doing book press all day, got a little nap in, and then took my husband and his parents to a nice dinner in a rooftop restaurant in Hollywood.
Sounds lovely. Go ahead, Charlie.
Congrats on your book, Damona. Big fan. Hi, everyone. I'm CHARLI PENN. I'm currently the Executive Lifestyle Director at Apartment Therapy Media, but prior to that, I was the Lifestyle Director at Essence Magazine for almost 11 years, which is crazy to say. I covered Black love, relationships, and dating there for most of my time. In addition to just lifestyle in general, I've written for many publications. I've hosted a few podcasts. One of them is a relationship podcast called The Solve for Essence a few years ago now, and Essence Yes Girl podcast, a Webby nominated show. I love talking about love and relationships and dating. It's been a part of my career since the beginning when I started at The Knot, which is all about weddings and relationships. So I'm excited to be here. How did I spend my Valentine's Day? As Damona said, media is busy. So I got home too late from the city in Jersey where my husband and I live to make our fancy dinner reservation, which is very typical for me and New Jersey Transit. So we ended up just coming up with a new plan and going to our favorite local cozy restaurant and being very overdressed for it because we were still going to wear those outfits. And we just had a nice cozy dinner together, like 10 minutes from our house, and actually really laughed about how much easier and wonderful that was. Happy to be here.
Sometimes simple is the way to go. So I think you did it right. Brendan. Oh, I don't think we can hear you. Can you hear us?
What about now?
There we go. Mhm.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brendan Durell, and I'm coming to you from a really dark mountaintop here in Coffee Region in Colombia, with the best Wi-Fi that I've had in a while. I am a intimacy coach, tantric practitioner, and I lead people on regenerative travel experiences to deepen intimacy with life, with nature, with the fabrics of Pachamama, of this beautiful earth we live on. And for Valentine's Day, I was in a beautiful little town where that movie Encanto is from, drinking some of the best coffee I ever had in my life.
Well, all right, all right. Love that. Dr. Perry?
How are you all? My name is ARMON PERRY. I'm a professor at the University of Louisville, where I teach in the School of Social Work, and I study fathers, families, romantic relationships, and co-parenting relationships. I spent Valentine's Day doing something that wasn't very exciting or sexy at all. My wife was making cupcakes for a function at her job, and she waited until the day before to do it. So I spent Valentine's Day watching the reruns of Law and Order, and then my son and I taste tested the cupcakes to make sure that they were good to go for the next day for my wife's event.
I love that. Cupcakes and Valentine's Day and Law and Order sounds great, actually. So thank you all for sharing and for being here. I guess we'll jump right in. I'm going to start with you, CHARLI. As a journalist who has spent more than a decade reporting on all things love and relationships, what are some of the most important qualities that a potential partner of a journalist should have?
Oh, that's such a great question. So many. In my experience, I would say the first one is patience. You know, journalists have busy, complicated, ever-changing schedules, routines, opportunities. Jobs change, deadlines change. A good partner for a journalist, in my opinion, must just be patient and be willing to just go with the flow, and understand that we don't often have a 9 to 5 routine and rhythm. Sometimes we do if we're lucky, but at any given moment, we can get that email, y'all know, that opportunity. We have to hop on a plane, go to Columbia, go to other places. And I think I'm so grateful that my husband has been patient with me because plans just change a lot. And being able to be patient and know that it's the job and not you, and having that understanding, which leads me to the next quality. I think just being really understanding. Hey, we might have had dinner plans, and then I found out I needed to go to an event to interview someone and get the story. So those plans need to change, and just understanding that changing plans doesn't mean that that person is less of a priority, that the relationship is less of a priority. Just understanding that it's our work and it's a nature of our job, and it's not always going to fit into like a nice little 9 to 5 box. And I think that's okay, but you have to find a partner that really, really understands that and can be patient with you and won't take it as a slight to the relationship or to them, or feel less important to you or like less of a priority because you are choosing to meet the demands of your job as a journalist. And it could be in any field. And also lastly, I would say supportive. Like we have a high stress job, I like to say, lots of anxiety, deadlines, high pressure moments, being on television, or having to interview a celebrity sometimes, or really just feeling that stress and that anxiety. And you really need a partner that's supportive of that and not adding to that. And that has been just really wonderful in my own relationship and marriage, is just knowing that like my husband's like, oh, okay, that's the deadline pace. I know it. I've seen it. I understand what you're going through, and being able to support me in that moment. And again, know that it's not a negative. It's just a part of who I am and what I do.
That's beautiful. I think, sometimes you have all these different features or qualities that come with being a journalist. What would you say are some of the qualities that make journalists great partners?
Also a great question. Being clear and honest communicators, which we should do well by nature of the field. But I like to say, like, look, if I tell, like, this is where I'm going, this is how it's going to go, this is what I need to do to get this story done or to meet this deadline. And I think it's really important to be able to communicate what's about to happen to your partner when plans change and when things shift, and just being able to clearly communicate why you maybe had to postpone something or write all night instead of go to bed. And also being great at time management, so you can get to the story, get to the work, and get back to the business of love and family at home. Like if you are great at managing your time, I think you can really balance and do both. And the better you are at it, the more likely that you'll actually make it back to your partner that evening or that week or the following week. And I think just being able to manage that time is important.
Absolutely. And to the point of home, talking about home, a lot of people live with their partners, a lot of people don't. Before moving in with a partner, I mean, there's a lot to consider. It's how are you going to divide rent? How are you going to divide chores? Making decisions about interior design, which couch do we keep? Or simply surviving in a small New York City apartment. So what are some questions or considerations that journalists in particular might want to ask of their partners in that process?
Is there space for me to be creative? I mean, we need to feel inspired, right? That may mean you need an office. It might be a studio, it might be a basement, a corner, a place for you to feel like you can work and not be disruptive to your partner in your home. You have to be able to feel comfortable doing that at home. So saying, is there going to be space for me to be me and do what I love? And is me, I don't know, transcribing or, typing all night going to keep you up? Is there enough space for me to be me and for you to be you, and for those things not to disrupt? Funny things like, phones in and out of the bedroom. I don't think a journalist ever really goes into sleep mode or do not disturb. Maybe we do. I haven't figured that out yet, but the alerts are going to have to go off, and I need to get those Slack notifications, and just jokingly, saying like, is that going to be okay? Some people need, the silence, no blue light, no nothing. And then really serious things like, are we going to have enough saved off should someone get laid off or need to go freelance? I mean, we know the industry that we work in is very volatile, especially if you're working a 9 to 5. And I think having conversations about like, is this rent affordable or this mortgage affordable? If something changes suddenly, sure, I'll get back on my feet, but like, that's just the reality of the business. And then as far as the core, I just think when you are partnered with a creative, the decor in your house and the organization has to inspire you to want to work and feel good. So like if you're not feeling that color, that room, or the mess, it's not a good look. So just making sure that you're on the same page with being able to make sure that your home reflects both of you.
Excellent considerations. We'll move over to Brendan. So having served as the intimacy expert for 5 seasons on the Netflix show Too Hot to Handle, oh my gosh, this question's for you. You described intimacy as both medicinal and a roadmap back home in a recent Instagram post. What did you mean by that? And how do you define intimacy and where it fits into work and love?
I love this question. When it comes to intimacy, I feel it's medicinal because like in being a roadmap, I'm not one to generalize. However, I feel I'm convinced that everyone desires to be seen for who they truly are, to be heard, to be felt, to 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 see their heart as is. And I'm not only speaking romantically, but also platonically. So I feel being in a space of deep intimacy is the most healing force on earth because that's what we all want to be. We want to be seen. And I feel the more we get to know thyself, it's the greatest intimacy because you're not afraid of the parts that might feel yucky, undesirable. You might, the shame things that come up. I work with a lot of men as well, one on one, and there's so much shame with men and vulnerability and emotions, even in the realms of love. So I feel being intimate with these parts of ourselves, these are the things that move the needle forward in healthy relationships.
Absolutely. It's no secret that dating and relationships can be daunting, but also very rewarding. So we're not going to write that off. But can you talk a little bit about the role of mindset when it comes to successful dating and relationships in marriage?
Absolutely. And as a disclaimer, by no means am I a marriage or relationship expert. I am just a very highly curious man who's been through his stuff through and through. And I've worked with many couples and I've researched many couples and people whose marriages have inspired me. And a mindset that I always come back to that I'm actively practicing as I'm currently dating now, it's my willingness to be curious. I feel curiosity is the number one thing when it comes to whether you're dating somebody for the first time and or it's a 40-year marriage. And this is a big principle within the tantric realm. It's how curious can I be with my partner, um, knowing that she's always changing. She's not the same person, just as I'm not always the same person. And I feel this is hand in hand with being a journalist. Um, Journalists cover stories. You're so curious about a story. You're so curious about why, the what, all the things involved. You're curious. And I feel if we can have the mindset of consistent curiosity daily as a practice, not as a thing, because I feel curiosity can also be learned. It could be habitual that I'm curious about how your day is. I'm curious about what foods do you like now that you didn't like two years ago. So I feel curiosity is the thing, the mindset that is the fabric to a healthy relationship and relating scenario.
Thank you. And thinking about mindset, Damona, I'm going to hop over to you. I'm a fan of the Drew Barrymore show, so I've seen you work with several folks who come on, and maybe they come in and they're not feeling so confident about their own situation, and I've seen you kind of coach people through. And so thinking about mindset and all of this good stuff, your new book is called F the Fairy Tale, right? So, and rewriting the dating myths and live your own love story. What would you say are some of the common myths that people have about dating and how those can hold them back?
Ooh, yeah. And I want to emphasize with the title, a lot of people think that I'm a love cynic. When I say F the fairy tale, we were just talking about it on Drew today in our taping.
Yep.
They think that it means I'm saying forget true love. You can't have it all. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you get to rewrite the dating myths and live your own love story. So it's all by our own design. And that's what a lot of the segments that you mentioned and a lot of the work that I do with clients is getting people to realize the power they have to tell their own story, whether they're journalists or not. It's all in the narrative. So I start the book and I start all of my clients out with mindset actually. And I had found that there were 4 myths that really govern each phase of dating: the mindset, the search, the date, the future. And so that the first myth that I really identified when people come to me is the list myth. They're like, okay, he's got to be 6 feet tall or taller. He's got to make this much money. He's got to also accept that I'm going to be working and I'm going to have, as Charlie said, I'm going to have notifications going off all night and all of that's going to be fine. I'm not going to need to change anything. And he is, or she, will need to check all of these boxes. And I totally agree with Brendan about being really led by curiosity and expanding our view of what we think we need, because we're just kind of taking the list that was handed down to us, or that we saw in rom-coms, or we saw in fairy tales, and we're just playing that forward. And it gets really interesting when you realize that that story doesn't have to be your story. And especially if you work in an industry like journalism, where you're not doing a typical 9 to 5. You have to be able to design your life in a way that supports that future vision that you have of the life that you're building, that you want to live, and who fits into that.
And that's a perfect segue. My next question is, obviously journalists are up often against deadlines and time constraints and working unusual hours or traveling. In your experience as a dating coach, how have you guided clients who want to find love but don't feel like they can find it because of their job or something else that's really taking up their time like that?
Well, time is our most valuable resource. We're not getting any more of it. So I always say, how you spend your time and who you choose to spend it with really matters. So if someone comes to me, and this has happened in the past, where somebody said, I really want a relationship, this is of the utmost importance to me. And I say, all right, let's look at how you're spending your time. Let's carve out 3 hours a week for dating related activities. And that could be swiping on apps, showing up at events, going on dates, but that is with you putting your intention and your time and your mindset towards dating. And like, I remember I had this one client, I said 3 hours a week. She's like, oh, I can't do it because, my boss might call me. And, sometimes she needs me on Sunday nights. I can't make it Sunday, and I can't make it Monday, because then on Monday, and, we have our stories, right? The narrative unfolded. And I was like, I don't think you have the time to do this. It's not that you don't have the time, you're not making it a priority. So if this really is the most important thing to you, you need to carve out the time to make this a priority. And maybe it doesn't look the same way for every person. Like if you have to work early hours, or that you are often traveling on the weekends, build the schedule around what's going to work for your life. But don't come at me with this big fairy tale hope, wish, and dream, and not be willing to make some compromises in how you're going to live your life to bring that person in it, because people aren't puzzle pieces. They're not just going to fit in neatly into what you're already doing. We have to create the space so that that person feels like a part of co-creating the story with you when they arrive.
That's so beautiful, the co-creation process. And it makes me think even about what CHARLI was saying about time management. Time management is so important, but it's so tough, but so important.
It
So
is.
thank you
And
so
I'll
much,
tell you,
Damona.
as a parent,
Yeah.
I've been married 20 years, and I've been married. That's wrong. Don't tell my husband I said that. I've been married 16 years. We've been together 20 years. And we have 2 kids, and I'm like, nothing will make you get good at time management like having children. You figure out, because when you only have that certain amount of time, you figure out how to get really efficient with it. And anybody can do that. You don't need to wait until you have the partner or the kids or the life has unfolded for you. You can create that at any point.
Absolutely. Wow. Time management. And then thinking about family, thinking about children, that actually goes, like, it's a perfect segue over to Dr. Perry. Your research has centered on the experiences of Black men in relationships, marriages, and families in a way that's often not heard. And some of this research can be found in your most recent book, Black Love Matters. What have been some of your key or most surprising findings about how Black men feel about and operate in romantic relationships today? And I just want to make the caveat that, of course, not all relationships include men. And can you share some of the demographics of the men that you included in that analysis?
Sure, absolutely. So again, in the research that I've conducted most recently, it's African-American men who sort of span the age continuum, the socioeconomic continuum. Not to get into a whole sort of a thing, but disproportionately research that features the experiences and the narratives of Black folks tends to be what we call deficit framed. we tend to spend a lot of our time concerned with the challenges and the barriers facing Black people. And in my research, I attempt to counter that narrative to sort of project a more asset-based frame, talking about the ways in which men can contribute to their families functioning in positive ways. So anyway, so for those reasons, my participants in my research are all across the age spectrum, all across the formal education spectrum, all across the socioeconomic spectrum, so as to be able to sort of dig into some of the nuances there. But to answer the question directly, what's so interesting about this is I've been listening to what everyone else was saying, and so some of what CHARLI was saying about the decor in your apartment. So I was thinking about the ways in which it's important for folks to be able to create space. And so Mike was talking about this sort of checklist, and people have these checklists, and I think what's important in my research suggests that we all have these things, whether or not they've been sort of superimposed on us or passed down to us. But one of the challenges people face is they sometimes forget that whatever these things are that you want, you have to create a space that facilitates that, right? Not much different than the way CHARLI was talking about the decor, and it has to inspire you to be creative, right? It's tough to be creative in a space that doesn't or isn't conducive to that. And similarly, if we want people to be open and honest and transparent with us, if we've not created a space that allows for them to do that or facilitates them doing that, it's unlikely to happen, right? So I think that that's important. It's also important, I think, even when Brenda was talking about intimacy, one of the more compelling findings for me out of my research is that Black men want and desire intimacy, and intimacy that sometimes is related to sexual intercourse, but oftentimes transcends sexual intercourse, right? But again, in order for us to be able to get to that, they have to see their partners as people that they have created the space for them to do that, so they can be open, authentic, and vulnerable, and not have that come back to bite them or harm them in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So those are the things that really, really jump out at me. And if I were to share with people some of the sort of major traits and qualities, again, I would just sort of try to summarize what I've heard from my co-panelists and uplift things like empathy, uplift things like reciprocity, and something else I think is super, super important, which is understand if you're going to be in a relationship, you have to understand opportunity costs, which I think is sort of a theme that runs through everything that folks have been saying. We've been talking specifically about journalists, and so you get all of these wonderful traits. You get a person who is great at communication, who's open and honest and clear in the way that they communicate, but you also have to give up, right? Some of the, you have to be flexible because of all the things that happen alongside dating a person who's involved in an industry. And so I think that that's the sort of a microcosm for relationships in general. If you want to have a relationship, you got to understand opportunity costs, because whatever it is you're getting, there's something that has to happen in exchange for you to get that thing. So empathy, reciprocity, and understanding opportunity costs.
Yeah, I think universally that's good advice. You labeled this period of time in your book as the golden age of revelatory Black male media, being 2010 to the present. What does that mean, and what implications might that have for men today and how they operate in dating and relationships?
Yeah, well, these are the good old days, right? And I know that may not resonate with some people who find themselves struggling. I've heard people make reference to the idea that the dating pool has pee in it, right? And I know for some people they've gotten sort of disillusioned and whatever the case may be. But when I talk about sort of the golden age of revelatory Black, what I'm talking about there is we live in a time where it is more possible and much more acceptable, and people are more receptive to Black men showing up in authentic ways that run the gamut in ways that we haven't before. And we see these things being portrayed in media in ways that haven't before. So I'm not suggesting that we are where we need to be. There's still a lot of work to do as it relates to the representations and portrayals of Black men and Black families in mass media. But again, to my way of thinking and the research that I've conducted, there are more authentic representations now than there have ever been before. You can find a little bit of everything And the more we do that, the more awareness is raised, the more we sort of contextualize, and we can get into the nuance, and we can sort of peel back the layers, and people can see some of themselves in what's happening on either the big screen or small screen in books or whatever the case may be. And even this space that we are engaging right now, this sort of podcast space, is allowing for, I think, really, really authentic voices to have resonance in ways that in days gone by, you had to be a sort of a celebrity of sorts, right? Whose lived experiences don't necessarily match those that everyday people are experiencing. So even the hour that we're spending today, I think in many ways be instructive to folks out there in the world, and they have accessibility to it in ways that hasn't happened before. So those are the things that I'm sort of touching on when I make reference to this sort of golden age that we're in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, you've also studied a lot about Black fatherhood pretty extensively, and you're a social worker by trade. What are some qualities that you think empirically good fathers embody and are linked to the most ideal outcomes for their children?
Yeah, so we were just talking about time, and
Yeah.
just like was mentioned before, time is our most precious resource. It's non-renewable. It's the only thing that we can't get back once it's gone, and you can't artificially manufacture it, right? So I think the first thing I would say when we think about fatherhood is spending time with your kids. And interventions and projects that I've run over the years, we tell all of our dads that you spell love, T-I-M-E. The time piece is important because it requires you to invest yourself and engage yourself in ways that will suggest and demonstrate and exhibit to people that you love them, not just sort of telling them. The other part about that that's important is that it takes that time spent to be able to understand your children's temperament. And once you can understand your children's temperament, then you can do what I think is another really, really important thing, which is to parent in response to your children's needs, as opposed to parenting in response to advancing your own philosophy or ideology. And so in this way, I sort of make parenting analogous to being a coach of some sort. And so if you think about some of the best coaches in athletics, these are people who they adapt their coaching style to fit the traits and qualities of their players. It's not just people who have a system or philosophy and they attempt to jam all of their players, no matter what their skill sets, through whatever that philosophy is. But you can only be successful in doing that if you have a clear understanding of what your players' strengths are. And in this analogy, we're talking about your kids. And if you have more than one kid, it's unlikely that their personalities or their temperaments are going to be the same. They may have the exact same chromosomes from, you and your partner, but they're two completely different people. And so parenting fairly, but not necessarily the same. And that's not something that you can sort of easily wrap your mind around unless you've spent time engaging people and knowing what their temperaments are, so that you can show up in ways that are about responding to their needs and responding to their cues, as opposed to just trying to advance whatever your own ideology or philosophy is.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of intentionality is something that's representative of parents, more contemporary parents. I don't know if our parents and grandparents were thinking in that same way or had that same consciousness. All of the research shows that Gen X and millennial parents are raising their Gen Z and Gen Alpha kids in very different ways. So that speaks to that directly. So thank you so much. Now we'll turn to audience questions. We had gotten some in advance on social media, and we have a few in the chat. So let's see what we have here. How and when you're dating, do you bring up the idea that you work unorthodox hours? What are some creative ways to work around non-traditional hours? And this is for anyone.
Well, as a non-journalist who I do work non-traditional hours, probably not to the extent that you all do in terms of Sunday night notifications and that sort of thing. But if the question is, when do you bring that up? I think pretty early on. My sense is the last thing you want to do is, oh, by the way, or aha, surprise, right? Again, we've been talking about transparency and authenticity and co-creating. And again, it's tough for people to co-create something if they don't have all the information that they need in order to make an informed decision about whether or not that's the thing that they even want to engage in. So my sense would be sooner rather than later, but of course I would defer to my colleagues who have much more expertise in that particular genre, though.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I really resonate with that, Dr. Perry, because for me, it's I'm recently dating again, and all the things that didn't matter to me 10 years ago that matter to me now, I make sure that I do bring them up within the first week. And for example, in vulnerability, it's like I desire to be a father one day. And it's like I want to put myself, I want us to be in the best position possible to thrive. So for me, there's no question off the table if I'm in the mindset of building something that's really intentional. I feel it's the same for the scheduling thing, because if I love what you said, you spell love by Time, and it's if that's how we're gonna build, and I'm not gonna be able to be in a space to provide that, I need to bring that to the table ASAP.
I feel that, Brendan and Dr. Perry. I just want to add, I think you have to be clear that it's not your hours, it's your passion. It's your dream. My husband and I have been together 20 years, married 14. And I was a very young journalist when we met. And I remember the first time, very early dating, and he was like, you work these hours, you work at night, you work on a Saturday. And I'm like, it's not work, it's work, right? But this is my dream. And I think when you are falling in love with a person and being vulnerable with them, you have to be clear that, at least for journalists, for creative, it's not just like putting time in on a time clock. This is how we get to where we want to go. This is how we succeed and become who we want to be. And I think anyone who loves you will immediately connect to that and understand that, and never see it as your hours, but really your hustle, your passion and your dreams, and how that work is how they come true.
I 100% agree with everything that was said before. And I think it's not so much the when do you bring it up as it is the how do you bring it up? Because sometimes we have things that maybe have been roadblocks for relationships in the past, or things that we anticipate may be a problem. So we bring them up as if they are a problem already. Like, well, this is how it is. If you don't like my schedule, you're going to just ship out. And it's a totally different conversation. And I 100% agree with Brendan about bringing it up early and being clear about what you're building. A lot of times clients will come to me and they're like, oh, I'm afraid to say that I want kids, or I'm afraid to say that I work these weird hours, because what if they reject me? What if they walk away? But if that person knows early on and they're not on the same path, they're not aligned with you, it's better to know early on. So if you bring it up like, this is, as Charlie said, this is my passion, this is what I do, and this is what it looks like. And it's not don't mention it as it's a problem. Everything is an invitation. Like, this is, you get to be a part of this dream. You get to be a part of this passion that I have, and the right ones will jump on that train and ride with you. And the ones that aren't up for it, they will self-select out, and that's okay.
I love the self-selection, but I also love the invitation. So thank you for all of your answers. Next question is, do dating apps work? And what are some ways to meet like-minded people outside of the apps? I presume if you've been married for
I'm very
15 years
biased.
or been in a relationship for 20, you're like, the apps, what?
I'm like, I'm out. They didn't exist when I met my husband. So
They did exist, because I met my husband 20 years ago. Well, not an app, on a dating
well,
site.
on an app or a website?
A website, but
Yeah.
same idea.
Same
But
camp.
it wasn't
Yeah.
cool, Charlie. It was not cool.
Agreed. So I'm just gonna go on mute.
I guess
I have to
there's
say I'm a little biased, because I've worked with a number of the apps as a spokesperson, and I met my husband online, and that is how most of my clients have met over the years. So I'm bullish on dating apps, but I don't think it should be the only thing that you're doing. So I have my clients look at the entire portfolio of, like, we need new inputs, we need new people in our life. So that can happen certainly on the apps, and the apps are also a great place to practice dating skills. But you also have to adopt an attitude of yes. Like, if you are approaching a dating journey and you're like, I want a different result. I need to do something differently. So say yes to things that you normally would say no to. Seek out opportunities to meet like-minded people, not necessarily singles events, although those are coming back. Speed dating, I just did a piece for LA Times in the fall about how speed dating is having a renaissance. It was pretty much obliterated by dating apps about 8 years ago. And now coming out of the pandemic, people are really craving that in-person connection. But those things can exist simultaneously. Use your network. I call it the connector circle in F the Fairy Tale. But use your network, say yes to things, and use the apps, because you just never know where you may come in contact with that person.
I have to piggyback on what Damona just said, because while I cannot speak to dating apps, I can speak to the circles and the connections and the friend of a friend. I have two very close friends who are now married to my husband's very close friends. And both of them asked us individually many years ago, do you know someone who'd be perfect for me? And of course, we didn't see it, because you don't see it. I mean, we're not professional matchmakers. It's not what we do. And we answered no. But just in those people attending parties, events, gatherings, stepping outside their comfort zone, they ended up meeting each other anyway, and then really being mad at us for not seeing the vision and putting them together. And now we always laugh, like, how did we not? I mean, and then we tell them like, oh, you were at our wedding, you didn't know. But what I will say is, like, that like overlapping circles moment is the origin of many a meet cute love story in my friend circles and friend groups. And a lot of times it's about saying yes to that RSVP, or sure, I'll come over for your birthday, or like, I'd love to take that trip with you, and just being open to do it. And I want to emphasize, these were like couple invites, and singles showed up and still found love. I know people love to say like couples only have couples at parties. Not true. Not true, y'all.
I'll add in, as a former user and probably the one who's been the most used of dating apps. I came off of them 5 years ago, and for two reasons. One, first of all, super grateful for them because they really supported me. I've been to close to 60 countries throughout the last decade for work, and made some unbelievable connections. Like, it really heightened my cultural experiences in 6 out of the 7 continents that I've put my feet on. And there was also a point for me where I found it really draining as well, that I was craving the traditional aspects of just a synchronicity of running into somebody, that I wasn't supposed to be on this bus. I was on this bus and I met this person. And with social media, with working online on my phone, computer all day, I found myself really exhausted on dating apps a lot, that I didn't have the same passion to pour into somebody on my phone as I would in person. So I've been on both sides of it. However, I will always say that amazing tool if it's used with intention.
And tool is actually the word that I had in mind, and I was just going to say that although I don't have a lot of experience with dating apps, but my sense is indeed they are a tool. And if I give you a tool, you can build a house. If I give you a hammer, but you could also tear the house down if you aren't using it correctly, using it inappropriately. So I think just like any other tool, it should be used as a catalyst and as a spark, and then being thoughtful and intentional and responsible with how it is that it's being used, I think.
That's great. The idea of it being part of your toolkit. Another one we have is, how should you navigate dating when you're a public face or the public knows who you are? I presume that could be if you're like a TV journalist or even a content creator. Brendan, having worked on Too Hot to Handle and people knowing who you are and people knowing who different folks are, like, let's start with you if you have an answer for that.
Yeah, it's vulnerably speaking, I'm a man who generally holds my cards really close to my chest, even before TV. Like, that's just who I was, and hence why, like, intimacy is such a fascinating curiosity for me, because in my search of that, it's opening me up. And when it comes to dating, that's also a reason why I came off dating apps years ago, because having my social media profile attached to something that's really intimate to me wasn't really working out for my benefit, because I was being seen as an intimacy coach, this person, that person. And for me, it's like the depths of who I am far exceed what a few lines can say and a few emojis. So I just left it in the hands of God. I was like, all right, universe, this you got me, and I trust, and it's been just that. But yeah, to wrap it up, it's been interesting, and it's also a very um, important practice of being in integrity and having high communication standards for myself, because I just don't want no drama, like at all, in my dating life. So it comes down to that.
I'll jump in on this one because one of the most hilarious arguments my husband and I ever had was over his social media profile and me explaining what it meant to be a public figure as a journalist, not a celebrity, not somebody that you recognize walking down the street, but someone you Google often if you read their work, and who someone may, go down the rabbit hole and try to find my partner and go on their page. And as call out culture as we know it sort of emerged, that was like a big conversation, and me sort of trying to be honest and say, you are an extension of me. We are partners. And it would mean a lot to me if you were thoughtful about some of the views you made public. You can have your views, you can be yourself, but how you present them on social media actually could affect my work one day. And trying to explain something that hasn't happened but could potentially happen just based on the nature of what it means to be a digital journalist or a journalist in today's world with social media. And that was not a fun conversation. And now my husband loves to say that he's boring on social media because of me. And that's fine. I'll take that L. But I hated to have to even ask that. And it was definitely not a problem that existed when we started dating. It just became something that was very real. And no matter how cute we can be about like views are my own in our profiles and bios, we all know it's just really not that simple. And also I think there was a need to want to protect him too from feeling like he would be scrutinized because someone read something that I wrote that upset them or that they didn't like or support. And that he would suddenly be victimized by just being married to me and that coming up in a Google search, So I just point that out because like we are all public figures because we have bylines, and books. Not about being Beyonce and Jay-Z. It's just about someone seeing your name and being in their feelings about something that you did or didn't report on or say or do, which you have every right to do. And that's the work that we do, but it's gotten weird. And I think it's definitely worth a conversation in any relationship, especially a new one, because it was definitely hard in my like established one.
Yeah,
That's really
absolutely.
great. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Yeah, Dr. Perry, go ahead.
I was just
Or-
gonna say, yeah, I mean, in the world that you all are living in, you all are your own brands. And just like any other brand, it needs and should be protected. And so I think that that's a part of the empathy, the reciprocity, and the opportunity cost that we were talking about early on. Like that's a part of the package. And so people, that communication and that conversation has to happen. And in order for the partnership to work, folks need to be on board with that, because again, it's not just your job, just as Charlie was saying, that this is your passion. In order for you to be able to move forward in the way that you need a partner that's supportive of you, and that's a part of the co-creation, right? We can go back to that point.
Yeah, I agree on the co-creation, and I kind of had the opposite problem from Charlie, because my husband, he's not on social media, like you can't find him. You good luck. You can find him on IMDb, because he's a television writer, but he does not like social media. And I said, I'm gonna need to post you every now and then because people are gonna think that you're made up. So you're now a part of the story, right? You're a part of the narrative. And we also, having kids, he's very careful about their image. So any pictures of our children, I have to pre-approve before I post them. And I occasionally I'll get him to agree to a photo every now and then. But it is a conversation. But having worked with a number of celebrity clients that, are fairly high profile celebrities, that has to be a conversation very early on, because there are some people that want that are chasing that want to be a part of the circus. And then there are other people, like I had an actress client who I was working with that it was really difficult to find someone because they didn't want, a lot of the people who were good matches for her didn't want that level of visibility. And she was in a place where, like, I can choose, do I want to show my husband's picture or not? She was in a position where it's going to follow her, and she can't control the images or the narrative at all. And that was really difficult. And quite honestly, she's still single. You know, people are always like, you've been working on the show for 4 years. Why is Drew Barrymore still single? I'm like, because I work on the show. I'm not coaching her, but a lot of times her dating life then does become content for the show. And you have to be, if you are going to step into that role with somebody in a high profile position, you have to be willing to go on that journey. So I think that's probably even more important than the time and the weird hours, to just understand, as Charlie was saying, like, you're an extension of this brand.
All really, really good. Last two questions, because we're coming up on time. And to this idea of you having conversations with your partner about how you interact in the world, how you interact on social media, how do you navigate networking events and social spaces and mixers when you're partnered? I think maybe as like an entertainment journalist, if you're going to be on a red carpet and there's Michael B. Jordan and there's, you know, like Idris Elba, some people's partners might feel a little uncomfortable about that. But how do you navigate something like that when it's part of your work?
I feel like Damona probably does way more of that than I do, but I feel uniquely seen in this moment, Caroline, because as covering Black love and men for Essence for over a decade, I have literally interviewed everyone you're talking about, Michael B. Jordan, Idris, all of that. And my friends would regularly say, how are you still married? Like, take photos with them, do podcasts. My husband doesn't care. I mean, and I love that about him. I don't think it's something you have to navigate if you pick the right partner, because it is still work. And as much as people always ask me about that, it's not ever something I've had to deal with in my actual relationship, because he understands it was my job and that we're solid. And I think, you know, you shouldn't have to navigate anything weird about the work that you do if your partner understands it's work, you know, and if you're equally paired, or equally matched, and you really have been, like, again, open and honest communicators. You know, we could laugh about some of those people when we get home and how funny the interview was or weird or whatever, and it's fine. I could even go and post the photo again for work or whatever, and it was never an issue. But I really just think it's a testament to the man that I married and the partnership that we have and how comfortable he is with who he is and who we are.
Well, and also, if you're in a professional capacity, like, you're not even thinking, you're not like, oh my gosh, Michael Jordan, because, like, that you can't do your job. You're thinking, what's the question I'm gonna ask, and, like, how am I gonna get this story? It's like a totally different part of your brain that's not even thinking what your friends are thinking. That's my experience of it. I don't do a lot of red carpet, but I'm aware that I'm always a brand, you know, as Dr. Perry was saying, like, I'm always representing my brand. So my job as a dating coach and TV personality, I do have to go to a lot of mixers. I have to be the life of the party. I have to make connections. I have to get people to feel comfortable. And my husband has always been aware of that, but it's always been a conversation too. So we are very clear on what the rules and boundaries of our relationship are. And I think that also varies depending on what capacity you work in and your own relationship. But that's I'm curious what Brendan thinks about this too. But, like, I think a lot of it is also just clear agreements and being in integrity, as Dr. Perry was saying, being in integrity with your agreements, whether you are single or partnered.
Yeah, it's in my experience, my last partnership that ended a couple years ago, I was invited to many functions, and partnered. And my biggest thing because also I understand the feeling within me to be seen, to be held in situations, to be acknowledged. And if I'm clearly partnered with somebody and they're coming with me to an event, and I'm speaking as a non-journalist because I don't know how it is to run up to somebody like that and to get the job done. I'm just speaking as somebody who's people want to interview me, do certain things like that. I still make it a point to always check in with my partner when I'm in that space. If we're at a table together, I get up and leave for a little bit. I make sure I make eye contact across the room, like she's with me, even if we're not together with each other in that moment. I keep that polarity together between us, just so she knows it's like, okay, yeah, he still got me, you know, and yeah, I got her too, and I know that she's there. She's not just another accessory for me in the space, because I desire for her to feel excited for my brand just as much as I am, as we were speaking about the brand. So I do things like that when I'm invited into spaces in a public capacity.
Excellent. Thank you so much for all of those answers. Before we wrap up, can you share something to inspire hope for those looking for love and those in love? And then let us know what you're working on and where we can find you online.
Well, I'll jump in. In terms of what I'm working on, my team and I just wrapped up a 3-year project where we're doing a healthy relationship and sexual health intervention with 16 to 24-year-olds. In a lot of ways, trying to impart upon young people a lot of things that we're talking about so they don't find themselves in adverse situations later on down the road. In terms of how it is that if people are interested, they can get in contact with me. Again, I'm a professor at the University of Louisville. I have social media, and it's Armon_R_Perry. There's not a whole lot going on there at all, but if people are interested in continuing the conversation, probably an email to my university email is the best way to get hold of me.
Damona?
I'm thinking about this inspiring hope. And really, actually it's funny because that's really what I aimed to do with my book, with F the Fairy Tale. And that is the exact quote from Drew Barrymore about it. She said, it's hope with a roadmap. And that, to me, really captures the moment that we're in. There's a lot of burnout, frustration, disappointment around dating. And all I've ever wanted to do is to remind people that you have free will, you have choice, you are co-creating and designing this life that you want. So don't give away your power. Don't give away your power. Go boldly towards that dream, that relationship dream that you have. And you can have it all, maybe not all at the same time, but you can have it all if you keep that curiosity and you keep that integrity and that empathy. I also talk in the book about empathy, which Dr. Perry was talking about. All of that is really key to unlocking love in today's world. And I know it can be really draining out there, but if people are falling in love every day, it's possible, and it's possible for anyone listening to this right now. So if you like that kind of talk, you'll get a lot more of it on the Dates and Mates podcast, which I host every week, new episodes every Tuesday. I'm on Drew from time to time, but you can always find out when I'll be on by following me on social at DAMONA HOFFMAN. And F the Fairy Tale, Rewrite the Dating Myths and Live Your Own Love Stories, available wherever you get your books in hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. Thank you.
Excellent. Brendan?
I am all for the slow burn, and I say this because it's also for me to practice that. Like when it comes to dating, fireworks are dope. Like in the beginning, and I've they're just amazing. Like the fireworks stage, we see it, we're in it, we're like ah. And I'm also like challenge yourself to be like, actually, let's slow down a little bit. You know, like even though we don't have time to waste, we do have time to be still and to like let the dust settle. So I say with anybody really in the dating scene, it's okay to wait a little bit longer. And I'm not meaning like holdouts or anything like that, but it's like you can take a beat, like in your own sovereign way. I share the same thing with the kids on Too Hot to Handle, it's like, of course it's for TV, of course it's that. Like for the TV part, it shows my workshops are like 7 minutes, but they're actually like two hours long to record them. And the in between bits that's not edited, it's like I'm talking to these kids, and I'm like none of them, they really couldn't grasp the concept of just slowing down. Like bro, just ask her last name. What are you talking about? There's things you can ask to slow the pace down. And I'm just really keen on just the slow burn candle, tantrically, in all relating aspects, but specifically in romantic capacity. And you can find me on IG, Brendan Durell. I'm actually currently working on a really exciting project, a docu-series of some sort, in the realms of intimacy and travel. And that's going to be, that's my baby right now. And, but yeah, you can come kick it with me on social media. And I really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
last.
And last but not least,
Yeah, I was just really deeply feeling what all of you said, so I'll be brief. As Damona mentioned, I know it's rough out there. I have the girlfriends, I hear the stories, like I know that it's tough. So I think my point of hope is that whether it's now, a year from now, 6 years from now, I still deeply believe that falling in love will be easy. So when it's right, it's easy. Whether it's a slow burn or fireworks, it's still easy. So if you're feeling like things have been hard and you're tired, good news is that when the right thing comes along, it will be easy. That part will be easy. Relationships aren't easy, but finding that person and connecting with them and realizing that they are your person is actually easy. So if you've been through it, I understand. And I think the hope out there is that it won't be hard when it's right. You can find me on IG at CHARLI PENN, CHARLI PENN. You can find my work all over the internet and then on newsstands. Just Google my name, you'll find some of that. And if you want to email me, you can email me at charlie@apartmenttherapy.com or my name at Gmail. This has been a pleasure. Thank you guys so much.
thank you all again. Thank you to our wonderful panelists, Damona Hoffman, Brendan Durell, CHARLI PENN, and Dr. ARMON PERRY. The Sidebar is a production of the New York Association of Black Journalists. The opinions expressed in this episode belong to the individuals who expressed them and not to NYABJ. Our show theme is by Hallisna Raps, and I'm CAROLYN ADAMS. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, and we will see you next time. I'll kick it over to Will if you have anything else to add.
I really hope y'all enjoyed it. I definitely did. This will be coming out on March 7th. So Thursday, March 7th, we release episodes every other Thursday. So please subscribe to the Sidebar, wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you, everyone else. Thank you for attending. Thank you to our panelists. Have a great night.